A little bit different video, or at least builds that I normally do, older bikes. I picked up a bike from Amazon, and it's a Hiland BMX. It's a 20-inch entry level. I picked it up pretty cheap. These normally retail for $200. I think Walmart has them at $160 if you don't have a red. If it's a green or a white one, I think you can get it for $160. Amazon had this one listed at $199 new, and I picked it up in a used condition, meaning it was returned. And the condition of the box when it showed up was pretty hammered. There's a big tape right here. Right there, the front's got some damage to it too. So this is just the axle poking out right there from the front wheel. So the reason for this video is I want to show that you can put one of these together with some basic hand tools. I wanted to see the condition, the quality of the bike, and secondly, maybe get this thing to live longer than one season with some basic adjustments to bearings and repacking the bearings. You're not have to repack them, but actually just put some grease in them very easily. Unpackaging this, definitely something's come out. I mean, somebody's been in this box already. Just looking at some of the quality of it. Seat's pretty heavy, generic, nice foam. Just a steel seat post. It does have pegs all the way around it. There's 4 pegs, which I will not install. And these are actually, you have to remove, they actually thread on the axles. So actually they're pretty easy to take on and off. So they're optional, you can want them or not. They do come with 4 pegs. They give you tools. Got a nice red color to it. That's kind of attracted me to it. And we do have pedals in here. Another reflector and owner's manual. Put this box out of the way. So there it is. Pretty easy. Most bikes always come with, you know, the headset and the stem's already in it. The crank's already in. All you do is put the seat post on, and there should be, oh, there they are. They already put the brake cables all the way through. So you just have to unsnap everything, cut the wire ties here, and just start throwing it back together. So regular hand tools should be able to get this back together, no problem. And I'm actually going to do it right here on the ground, showing you don't really need anything elaborate, not a bike stand. It does help to have a bike stand, but we won't need one. So I'm just going to cut some of this stuff off there. The only thing I wanted to check is because there was damage on there. You can see this is what protected the axle. Now it's kind of blown out, but this isn't bent. Just going to spin it and see if the axle's bent. Now right away, I can't even spin this hardly at all. So the preload on this bearing, the front bearing, is just so tight that even adjusting these would be better than, you know, not, if you didn't grease them, at least if you adjusted the load on the bearings, then you would probably get a lot more life out of this bike. But my experience is there's hardly any grease inside here. So that's why I was saying we can use this little multi-tool they give us, is because, if I can find the right one, it should be a 15 on this inside. One of these little notches should be a 15. That's a big guy. Right there. So you'll never get a regular wrench inside that. You can see that. But you can use this little tool which works. This usually is a 15, that's usually a 17, and these are 15. So if you're ever working on a bike, if you have a crescent wrench, it can do everything. But if you have at least a 15, 14 and a 13 should do everything. And same with the Allens. These usually is a 4, 5, and 6 is all you need for Allens for bikes. So we'll adjust that up. We'll leave this paper on just to protect it, or the foam on at least I should say, to protect it. Cable's already on here. Brake cable. Handlebars are ready to go. You just have to flip them up and put them right inside the stem here. Now this is something new that I haven't seen in a while. I used to use plastic sleeve that goes in here. They have actually got a fake axle. This keeps the axle, they're the forks to get bent. So we'll just use a multi-tool here. This keeps the forks from getting damaged in shipping. That's pretty cool. Paint's been protected real well. Well, there's our first damage is right here. There's a big whammy in the fork, dented. Now, I don't know if that's, I don't think that's a factory deal. That is definitely damaged. It's got a dent right there. So we'll keep building it. My plan with this bike is just to pass it on to somebody, sell it for what I bought it for, all built, ready to go for the season. Now this is an Allen here. It should be a 6, which is that guy there. But we will grab our bigger 6 here. Spin these off. And I'm still on the ground. I haven't put a tire on it yet. I mean, I haven't put it in the stand. Just make sure this is going the right way. We are going to have to set the gyro up. Those aren't hard to do. Some of the nice, well, one of the nice features with this bike at $128, well, $199 or $160, depending on what color you pick up, is the rims are supposed to be double walled. I'm actually going to pull the tire off and see, at least investigate to make sure that it is double walled. That's a plus, especially with rims and kids. This is supposed to be, you know, a park bike, meaning you go and use it at the park bike or the BMX parks where they have the jumps and the ramps and all that kind of stuff. So having a double walled wheel rim is nice, plus because it won't get all beat up and dented. At least it's supposed to be stronger than a standard rim, single walled. This will hold that in place for now. take the rest of this off. Setting these gyros up are pretty easy, because you have a long side and you have a short side. So since this is coming off the right side here, the short side is going to go orientate to the right side, and you just thread this adjuster, put it, it might be easier to come on the outside here of the front brake, because the front brake is going to run through your stem. So run this all the way down as I'm threading this in. Run this stop nut or jam nut all the way up. Run that all the way down. And then that way you can be able to grab that plate. This is your gyro because this spins. The longer side is going to go to the outside or the left side of the bike. And I can already see this is bent, got damaged here. This plate is actually bent down. So I just got to bend that up. That's just cheap metal. I'll just grab it, bend it up. Flatten it out. So this longer side will go to the left. Just slide it down. Again, thread the adjuster. You can see it's going to take that all the way down. So that gives it enough play. It should have this barrel should be all the way in. This barrel should all the way be in. And then now you should be able to just slide the cable ends. Should just be able to grab right here. They've already got the bottom already adjusted. So you can see they've got a cable here. This is already set. And then you should be able to grab this other side and push it down. Now your gyro's in there. I mean, it's set. So you've got this upper here and you got the lower. And this just floats, as you can see, between them. Now when you get ready to adjust these, the cable's already set up all the way to the back. See the cabling here? It's already set up. This doesn't have an adjustment here. It does have an adjustment here. Right there's a barrel. So between all these barrels, this is how you tighten this gyro up. And also if you want to, when the cable stretches, because they will new, they'll stretch, you have to take the slack out, but you got room to take slack out here and actually down here at the U-brake. These are all U-brakes on this bike. So now you do is run these barrels all the way up. Now make sure you got good positive braking. Just do it with your fingers and take them up down here also. You just barely take them to the end of the adjuster. Don't take them all the way out, just run them all the way out. Then run the jam nuts back up into that. And that way you'll have a nice tight brake system. Run those back out. And this is a 9mm. One of these should be 9. Just run those and jam them down. That keeps those barrels from moving. Same right here. That way you'll have a nice brake. Probably have to adjust them a little bit more. But now you got the brake set. I didn't put the wheel on yet so I could have some stability since I don't have the stand. Now I've got the brake set. This front brake is already on there. And then you got the rear here. All set. The cable's on there. We'll just tighten this up a little bit here. We'll put the seat on next. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to flip it over. If I could get the right millimeter. I don't know, I put my 6. Let's use this guy. Just setting this up temporary so it doesn't move it. One thing nice to check on the seat tube is make sure there's no burrs in here. We'll scratch the seat up, maybe hold it up. These are probably 5s, and they are. I gotta find my 5. I'm gonna loosen this up just a little bit. This has actually got 2 bolts on it, which is nice. They're smaller. Normally these are 6mm on heavier bikes. Now I put a little grease on these. And this is, most bike shops will do this. Steel on steel. If it's left out in the rain, it could rust up in there, and then you got a problem trying to get a seat out later, but probably not on this bike. Now this might have to be cut on somebody that's a smaller rider, just because I'm bottomed out right there. And you can see how much more room. So somebody young, probably in the 6-7-year-old might have a hard time fitting on this thing with that seat being so high. But it's a nice feature having a double clamp like that. Now that seat's down, pointed down, but we're just using that to protect it. All right, I'm going to use some of this packing material. I'm going to flip this bike upside down so I can put the front tire on. Protecting the grips, protect the seat. Move this over a little. There we go. Now at the minimum you can do with this, like I said, we can use that little tool they sent. Easiest thing to do is, since I can barely turn that axle, it's so tight, is actually set the load on this. So I'm just going to use this little tool. That's a 15 on the interior of it, the nut, the cone wrench itself, or the cone nut, and then this is a 17. Just going to back this out. That just slipped off there. Might have to use my oh, that hurts. That's just poking me good. I just want to demonstrate that you guys can do this at home with the tool. Let's figure out that 15 again. Oh, that's why they put it on the end, because this is the same 15 as what the pedals use. So I'm just going to try backing this out. And that just slipped again. They've got that so tight. No need for that. Okay, we're not getting it with this tool. It's rounding. So I'm going to have to grab my cone wrench. And that's the other alternative you have, is you take it to a bike shop and have them put this together, or find an independent bike shop or a bike mechanic in your area. They'll be able to do this. Now that just popped off easily, backed off. Now I do just hold this here. Let's see if I can get that backed off a little bit. That's better. Just adjusting. Yeah, that's better. That'll make that live a little longer. At minimum, I would do that, is adjust these bearings. And it's going to be the same on the back. You don't want them too loose. That'll do it. Now the front tire, let's drop it in. If they're not aired up all the way, you should be able to just slide it through here. So supposedly this has a liner in it inside for the tube, a liner. And these are supposed to be double walled, which we'll investigate that once I get this together. This is just putting it together, showing you how to do it. So these are 15 millimeter up here. The brakes definitely will have to be adjusted. They're way off. And then I'll show you an easy way for the pedals. Chain's pretty tight, but chains will stretch. This does have an internal drive inside here, which is nice. That's kind of on the higher end bikes. It makes you so you can have a small sprocket up here, little guy back here. The bottom bracket seems tight. I'm going to check the tightness of the bottom bracket just while we have it here. Holy shnikes. They put that on tight again, didn't they? Jiminy. Those are tight. Those are going to come loose. Let's go check the chain here. See, that bottom bracket is pretty tight too. That's not even spinning by itself. You can actually feel the bearings. So this is, again, this is a little bit much. If you don't have the tools, Just going to back this off a little bit. Then tighten it back up. So this is a 32, 30 millimeter. Then I use a small, this is a Park tool. It's got a couple nuts. You can actually use a screwdriver and a chisel, or a screwdriver and a hammer, and kind of back this nut, but that was way too tight. Those bearings would have failed. Kind of telling me I can tighten that up, and that every time that nut flexes in there. So these are not the highest quality bearings. I'll run this back a little bit more. That's better. I'm going to repack all this anyway. That axle's pretty good in the back though. Pretty pleased with that. Throw this back on. Oop, I think I messed up on that. Is it underneath? Yeah. I turned that the wrong way. There we go. Get that way. Put that there. Now we're hooked up on that. You know, frame-wise, these are not bad frames. It'd take a lot to break them. But this crank is like cheesy as can be. Set that straight again. Looks like the dropout on this side, on this, I guess the left side, is a little wonky looking. It's not bent, it's just how they welded it up. Alright, so pedal wise, they're just plastic. I don't think they have any bearings in them. Well, actually I do see bearings, which is better than most. Most of them I don't see. These do have bearings, I can see them. There's probably a nut underneath here. They are marked right and left. These will last a lot longer than most. Left being away from the crank. They are reverse thread on. Actually tells you which way to go. They got a little arrow on them, which is nice. This is a reverse thread on that side. Your left side. Right side, since you spin into it. This is where I have reservations of this little tool. But it's a 15 on these. You can pedal backwards and tighten them. but you can't get a lot of leverage on this. These pedals, you can actually get a wrench on them, and you definitely want to use a wrench to tighten these, not that little tool. So just push back, and that way they won't come off when you're riding them for the first time. So the bike is actually together. Only thing you need to do now is adjust brakes. This is where stand really is helpful. And I could show you how to do that better in the stand. But that's the little first part of it. So it's a Hiland Redeem 20-inch wheel. Okay, let's put the Hiland in the stand, and I'm going to show you exactly to make this bike last more than a season or a couple of months. Some adjustments and some lubrication you should do to make it last. Big one is the bottom bracket and the wheel bearings, what I would key on. $15mm for the axle nuts. Just run them loose. I haven't aired the tires up yet. I'm just going to run the chain off so I can take the rear wheel off. I'm going to take the front off too. I think I put it on very tight. I'm just going to do the bottom bracket now. You have to take the left pedal off. That's a 15mm. Remember, these are reversed. These are reverse threaded, so left hand thread. So not a righty tighty, it's a lefty tight, right loose. Try to get in here so you can see. I don't think this will. So you just have a nut on the outside, then you have the cone inside here. Now there's special tools you can use. I have a large crescent that should reach it. I'll just use a large crescent for today. Normally I just use my bike tools. That's why I like the bike tools, because they've got a better grip. So this again, it's a left-hand thread, so you can turn it right to loosen it. Just spin that off. There's a washer in here. These get kind of tight. Just a small pick. Should come off pretty easy. being a brand new build. Screwdriver works. Just hold it there. And it should just spin. The reason we're taking this apart is I'm going to show that there's very little grease inside here. And also the tension on this, you know, the load on them, the adjustment on the bearing is pretty weak. And this is what you might run into as this gets tight. That's because the threads are so weak on these cranks that sometimes it distorts the threads. So you might have to grab like a pair of channel locks or something for that cone. To get past that first thread that might be a little boogered up. That's still not giving me. I'm just going back and forth trying to get those threads cleaned up a little bit. So if you want to make one of these bikes last a lot longer, you could always buy a crank and a new bottom bracket set, a higher quality one. But then you might as well just buy a different bike. But for a young rider, new bike, first bike, this is not a bad bike for 130 bucks, but new 200, but you get these shipped to you. I'm already seeing how this bearing is distorted. If I showed it sitting on here. Can you see that? This is flat. This is actually distorted, and that's because it was over tightened. This appears to be straight, the nut, but that is distorted. And it's just, they probably put these on with, you know, probably with machine, not hand threaded, or probably done with a machine of some sort, who knows. So this is not enough grease on here. There's nothing on here. So that would be wiped off real quick, and then you'll have a bottom bracket fail. So I'm just going to put some grease on it. And there's nothing special with the grease. There's no need to go out and buy Phil Wood high-end, you know, water resistant grease. I just use a multi-purpose on a lot of my builds. Now, if I was building something I was going to race and I wanted less resistance, something that was designed for bikes, and that'd be one thing. But stuff I build, general purpose stuff, is fine. Now that's going to make that bearing last a lot longer. And then we'll adjust it up. I'm not real concerned with the cage being bent. These are just cages. They're just supposed to hold the bearings in place, not necessarily anything other than that. Put a little bit inside here on the cones here. Just put it back in. Let that sit there. Yeah, it's a little tight. Because it was over torqued when they put it in, they stretched those threads a little bit. But it'll go back in. There it goes. It got past that tight spot. So we'll feel a little bit of tightness. Put your washer back on. There's a slot it has to line up on. Keeps that washer from spinning, so you can jam that outside nut on. Lefty is tight on this one, left-hand thread. Now, since this does flex a lot, meaning there's a lot of this metal is not real heavy on these, so when you tighten this, it will tighten up, jam up. So on this particular bottom bracket, I'll just tighten it, snug it. Now I can already feel there's tension because it's actually flexing this cone on the outside, the inside. Now I'm going to back this. I'm going to back this inside nut off. We'll spin it back into this way, and it's going to be a little bit looser. Actually, we'll go the other way. There's going to be a little bit of play right there. As I tighten this up, it should take that slack out of there. And you could use a crank arm to tighten. And that's good. Got a little bit of slop to it. That ain't going anywhere. Now that's going to make that bottom bracket last a lot longer. Now the headset. This looks pretty complicated, all this braking stuff, but it's really not that big of a deal. We'll try to get a close shot in here. But you do have to remove all this to get to the headset. This might be worth it just to show this, because you never know when you have to actually repair this or take it apart, because something comes apart, then you just don't want to leave the bike setting just because of a simple brake issue. So we'll try to get down here closer. I'm just going to take the handlebars off for now, and then we'll just mess with the brakes. Since these all, I don't know if these have a quick release in them. No, they do have a quick release. So quick release on these, you do have to be able to push the tire together, the brake pads together like here. And then this just slides out of the slot here, and that allows you to, well, you had slack. Let's give a little bit more slack in that. This cable runs through the stem bolt. This, well actually this is a threadless stem, but there is a hole through that top plate there. And then we can get a little bit more tension down here, a little bit more slack in here. And that way we can use our quick release and get these handlebars out of the way. So I'm just going to pinch the brake cables together and lift that up, and that should give us enough to release this front brake lever. There's still tension on it. That's enough to get the barrel adjuster. We turn it down that way with the slots down. Now we just slide the brake cable out of the way. It'll be free and clear. Same with the rear. There should be an adjustment for quick release, which is just the cable there. Line the barrels up again. Just slide in there. Now we can get the brake cables out of the way. If I take this nut up, this whole deal will just flop down. There should be, actually we might be able to do this without that. So we got the brake cables off the levers. As you saw, I did that. There's just a slot here that you can line these two. This barrel adjuster and then the jam nut have a slot so you can slide the brake cable out of the way. Now these are loose. We might have enough to remove and get some grease down here in this headset. I don't think we will, so I think I'm just going to remove these, get this out of the way as a unit. Let's get 6. This is a 6mm. I think we're just going to take this handlebar out of the way so we can lift that. You see them drop back here, and you're clear. Try not to chip your paint up. The handlebars drop down. Now let's lift those out of the way. This right here should be a 15. It is. Shouldn't be that tight. So I use this little nut up here. It's kind of like your preload to your headset for the stem here. The stem just pinches this threadless fork, so you got a fork that runs through the steer tube up here. There's no threads on it because that's why they call it threadless. And it just pinches Got two, these should be 6mm bolts that just pinch this stem right here. So I'm just going to push that out of the way. And we're just going to unloosen that. It's a 6mm. Now, is this necessary? Not to make the bike live, because the amount of turning is minimal to the amount of turning that you're doing that bottom bracket or your wheel bearings. But since we're in here, I might as well just demonstrate it. So normally you take the whole brake cable out, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave that loose. There's the top of your fork. It's going to hang right there. And this plate here is just loose. That's that plate that's held in place. Goes underneath just like that. I got my grease ready to go. I'm just going to lift these spacers up. There's some spacers here. Just going to lay those out of the way. One more spacer. And then your bearing. Let's see if this one is loose. That's hung up. We can get this out of the way too. This is the gyro that actually floats. Just going to lay that out of the way. Now, when I lift this up, there's a little bit, there's like a sleeve in here. Tap that just a little bit. That's going to help loosen that up. Don't drive it down with a hammer. If you ding this, your steer tube on your fork, your stem might not go down. A little plastic washer there. Now there's your bearings right here underneath. All this can just slide out of the way and put it back. You can drop it down. See the bearing here, down below. I'll just put a little grease on that one. Dress it up a little bit. Like I said, this isn't mandatory on the headset. More so on the bottom brackets and the axles. So that's adequate there. Now this one, you definitely don't want to put a bunch of grease up on the stem area. We'll wipe that off because you want that stem to be able to be dry as possible so it doesn't slip, because it uses just the pinch bolts. There's no threads holding that on there. That's plenty of grease. These aren't large bearings. And just start assembling it back. That's like a little dust ring there. And that's actually the cone that takes the pressure. Start forcing it back down. You'll keep the tension up with your bottom hand there. Take a rag. Try to wipe off any excess grease up here. And then the spacers start going back on. Get that out of the way. So this is a 1 1/8, which is a pretty standard fork anymore. We'll get that adjusted up a little bit here. Just kind of position it. Plate comes back on like so, which is sets right below the stem. The stem will come back on. And this is how you set the load or the preload on the tension for the bearings. I will put a little grease down here just for the this bolt that goes through. There's a star nut that's inside this steer tube of this fork, and that's what this is attached to. Those can be replaced if they ever get damaged, or you have to replace a fork. You'll need a star nut. So this isn't going to go anywhere. It's going to stay right there like that. So this is where you set your load of your bearing. I just use this nut here. You don't have to crank it down. This is where you set your fork straight here, I mean your stem straight. Kind of give it a gauge. And then just make sure you got no play in that fork. I just cinch that up a little bit at a time. Should be no drag on it. Check for play. I think that's good. And you'll take your 6mm again, and you'll tighten that stem up. Straighten in your, make sure it's straight. You kind of get a look straight down there and tighten that up, and now your front fork or your headset should be set pretty good. Now these are, this is not a high-end stem, so don't be wailing on this thing or you'll be stripping these out. But you don't want to move it either. So you're just going to have to gauge it. All right, since we're in here pretty close, I can show you how this is set up again, this gyro. So the bottom, well, that just fell into place, as you can see. The bottom's right there. Same on this side. Move that back over. Okay, so that's set. Get our handlebar back on. Then drop all the screws. Nice. Yeah, we'll run this through again, this through, everything through the middle. All right. Yeah, just reverse, put the brake right side your rear. Line those slots up again. That should do it for the rear. Remember, this is off again. We didn't put that, we didn't set the brakes. This, we'll just run back up underneath. Actually, the levers are nice on this bike, believe it or not. They've got a little bit of spring tension to them. Well, I can get that adjusted up. There we go. Now just, if you have a smaller rider, there is a screw right here that you could run that lever in. If you don't need that, just take those screws out because they do stick out. You can't get your hand hooked on them. If you could see that pretty good. There's a small adjusting screw right here. That allows that lever to come in. But just remember, as you pull that in, that's just less leverage they have. So those are there for that to adjust. So if your child can't grab that lever, it's too far down, just thread that screw in and that'll push that lever up. You might have to loosen up some brake cable to do that, but that's what those are for. If you don't need them, good idea is just to take them off so they don't get their hands or fingers stuck in there or rip something, because they do stick out. They do have a little bit of a I don't know, a hang up on them. And then your adjustment here is on the front with a 5. You can move those levers up and down. Okay, so that was the headset. We just took care of that. Now we'll get into some wheel bearings. Remember, I have loosened these up before, but they were really tight. So it's a 15 and a 17. This is a 15 on the interior, the inside one. Outside is a 17, as I drop that. Now I already adjusted it once, but I tried to attempt to use their tool they gave us, that little multi-tool, and I didn't have the leverage for it, and it also started stripping. So that came loose. So this outside jam nut here, we'll thread off first. And hopefully these are caged bearings, they're not loose, like they're set in a cage, like the bottom bracket. That way you're not chasing bearings around, which these are. These are loose. So you don't have to take it all the way out. This is what I do. They're exposed now. There is some grease in there. I just take a little bit more, run it in there, not try to disturb them because the grease is a little tacky. It will actually pick them up. So there's no cage holding these bearings. They're just loosely set inside the cone there, that wheel. So just run them like that. Spin this back down. That way you're not losing them. That serrated like surface goes out. You want that to grip against the fork, the nut. There's a smooth side and there's this serrated, I don't know what you call it, it looks like it's just roughed up so it will grip the fork and not spin. I'll leave that like it is. Come to the other side and do the same thing, but this one I know I didn't probably loosen this side because it's tight. Now there's, if you got an issue, started backing this off and it got real tight, it's probably because it got damaged on that side. And that shipping when that box was all beat up. Maybe this is a new side, so I'm going to unloosen this one. Nope, this was the side it loosened. So we'll do the same thing, run this jam nut off, axle nut, whatever you want to call it. A little tight at the end because I think the threads got damaged. And I'll run this up just far enough to expose those and jam some grease in there. Again, being mindful not to pick those bearings up out of there. This grease is tacky, so I'm just taking it easy. That should be plenty. Give it a little bit more life. Spin that back down, set the bearing load on it, and call it good. The other thing I wanted to check on this is that the manufacturer claimed, at least on the Walmart and Amazon websites, when you look this Hiland bike up, is these are double walled wheels, and also they got some type of puncture resistant liner in them. I don't know if the tires got a liner or there is a actual liner they installed keep you get from punctures. The biggest thing is some areas like here we've got thorn, you know, when some of the vegetation starts dropping, they got thorns and a lot of punctures there. Not necessarily going to protect you from a nail. It's mainly the thorns and stuff you get on sometimes during the seasons. Okay, so I'm just going to set the load again and jam these up. Since I didn't move the axle, I shouldn't have to worry about side to side. If I went one side or the other two, that's about perfect. Yep, that's good. So I'm just tightening these up against each other. Now let's investigate and see if there's actually a liner in there if these are double walled wheels. They appear to be because they have this little drop in here, that step. That's usually a good sign. I'll let some air out. These do have a rotational. That's something I didn't actually check when I put it on the first time. There is a rotation. The tread says go this way. Kind of pointed, you know, this way is your arrow. So moving the rim strip over, I see a spoke. So the spoke is actually flush on this interior. So I can pretty much gauge the thickness of this. It looks and appears to be a double wall. Just not the type you usually see with a, you know, the hollow, the spoke is all the way through. I don't know. That's debatable. We'll actually pull this tire off. We'll see this liner also that they claim is in here. Hopefully it's not a pain to get back on. Well, let's see if there's a liner in here. Well, there's no liner. And I don't know what they claim to be a liner in there. Looks like a regular tire to me. The inner tube appears to be the normal inner tube, and I don't see a liner. Unless they're saying there's something about this tire design that has a liner in it, but I don't get that one. The rubber on the inner tube doesn't feel too much different. It could be a heavier inner tube, but I was expecting to see something inside this tire that would be a protectant, but that doesn't seem like anything to me. So, guess I call BS on that. I guess they should clarify. Now, double walled. At the inner tube hole, if I pull the liner out, there is a double. It appears, no, that doesn't. A true sense of a double walled would you'd have actually two layers. Now, this outer part is definitely constructed with a double wall. This is hollow, I know it is. And you have this like where the bead would lock into. That appears to be double walled in the outside, but not in the sense where the rim itself, usually when you have a double walled wheel, you'll see the spoke would actually be set inside one wall, and then you have a second wall on top. This one just appears that maybe this is double walled, the outside edge. So I think I'd call BS on that one too. Normally you see double walled, it's all the way across. But I believe this is, maybe this strip out here is a double walled. So, I don't know. Creative marketing. So no liner, and I don't see a double walled wheel other than maybe the outside is heavy where this rib is at. So you can kind of see the rib is protruding. They're heavier than most, but I think it's, to call it a double walled is a little far-fetched in a sense of what I know, I realize is a double walled wheel. So let's get this back on there. It's just something to think about. Is it a heavier wheel than most that I've seen? Yes, it is. It feels heavier. This outer wedge is definitely. So it'd probably be okay. All right, we'll get this back on. Take a look at this rear integrated, which is nice because you can put a small sprocket. Now this is pretty tight itself. I might just back this one out. I know for my past experience dealing with these is a lot of these are, you start tearing them apart, you got some issues because they got a lot of little bearings in there. So I'm just going to back this one off just a little bit and see. This is a little tight. That feels better. Probably call this one a day. I don't feel like taking it apart and not getting it back together. Just want to show you an adjustment on these U-brakes. Just setting this back up on the front so it's easier to see this on the front. As you push these together, there's no, right now I have the tension off these. This is the quick release part. So if you ever have to change a tire off, you just push these together and hopefully you've got enough adjustment to slide this out of the slot, which there's definitely no adjustment. That's the rear, this is the front, this is pretty tight. Now this is going to stretch over time, so I'll have to loosen that up. This is a 9mm, I believe. To tension these arms right here is this adjustment. So you have an outer, like it's a nut, a bolt that goes into the frame. These are 990 brakes, or U brakes. 990 is the Diacomps number. But you use this adjusting outside here, and then that holds it. So there's a spring inside here that will tension this arm. These are pretty good. So after you get it adjusted, you might have to adjust the tension from right to left so it doesn't hit the rim. So the wheel is bolted in square to the fork, and now it's just a matter of adjusting. So the shoes themselves are hitting a little high. This side's not bad. This side is pretty off. So you don't want it into the tire. You could wear the tire out. So you might have to adjust these. That's just a 9mm on the outside. That multi-tool they gave you is not going to be really easy. Actually, it's a 10mm out here. So you just loosen it up and you push it in, and then you can adjust. Now these have ability to tow it in or out also because they have little concave spacers in here, inside here. So you always want, wherever the rotation of the tire or the wheel, you want the front to always hit first so you don't get any chatter. What happens if you hit the back first, it will start squealing on you, and that's just the vibration of the pad. So this is set up now. I just push it in, loosen that up, and then set it that way and then tighten it. Now that's not going to wear out the tire and it's hitting the rim. Might have to go a little higher. This is a pretty big pad, so should have a lot of stopping power. Now you don't want that extremely towed in to hit the front first. You want some, because once you clamp it, it will flatten against there with the pressure. Like I said, they had this one pretty decent on this side, but the toe is a little extreme. Just gonna loosen it a little, adjust it up. That's pretty good there. I'm gonna loosen this up here. That's a 10. So these are all 10s. Now that's the cable itself. I'm just doing that so I can get this back out and get this quick release, which is not really quick release if I can't move it. So I loosen the nut here, which is a cable. And I'm running this back out so I can slide this in the slot. And that's your quick release. Now I can pull this back in. If I get that to stay. There's a lot of tension on there. This cable's fighting me a little bit. There's a third brake tool, it's called, which holds your clamps together there, or holds your shoes together. I'm just going to tighten that up a little bit. Pull this in, if you can see that. I do want to be able to use that quick release if there is a tire issue. These cables will stretch, and you're going to have to adjust these brakes. So this left side, your front, stretch them out a little bit. Now they're pretty far out, so I could unloosen this cable again, but I want to see if I could use a quick release. If I push these together, am I able to get this quick release out of here? And I'm not, so it's pretty tight. I'll let those settle in. I'm just going to use the barrel adjusters that are on the brakes. So you have one up here by your handbrake. Just run that out. And then put the jam nut back up against it. Then I'm going to use the adjuster here. Push a little in here. And then run the jam nut back in. Now if you ever have to change a tire out, you can run this barrel adjuster up at the handbrake back in, and you can run this one back in. And that way you got some slack so you can pull this out and change the tire. If not, you'll just have to loosen that nut back up. Now tension wise, on the arms, if I apply these, this left side I call has got more action. See how that's moving in quicker? This left side is actually moving more than this, well, it'd be the right side if you're sitting on the bike than the left side. The way you adjust those, so this outside here, this right side, if you want to adjust this to have more tension, we'll just loosen that up. It should be a 5. That's a 5 there. And that should be a 13. 13, or you could use a regular wrench. There's nothing holding it. I like using my cone wrenches, but that should be a 13 right there. Now you just loosen this up. Now I've got movement, and I can create more tension on this one side. Now when I pull it, you can see they react almost instantly the same. If I want to loosen again, I'll show you, once you take the tension off it, this side's the only one that reacts. So I really like the U-brakes because of the adjustments, the possibility. So again, I'll take a little bit more tension. Put more action on that one side. Now I got even braking. So just tighten that up. Make sure this one's tight. Must have moved. I could go just opposite. Release it. That must have moved on me. There we go. That's how you get that to center too. It still feels lazy on this side, doesn't it? Sure looks it. Just gonna loosen that up a little bit. Now these are just plastic in here. These are not metal, so these have a tendency to crack. These cups inside here on the lower end ones, so they're holding a spring against this, and if they crack, they don't hold that spring anymore. So that's something you got to be aware of too. So that's how you adjust the U-brakes. I'm going to do the back now and tighten it up, and we'll be done. So the Hiland's all together. Overall impressions for the price that it was purchased for. Well, the Hiland's all together. I'd say overall impressions for the purchase price of having it shipped to my house for $127, only due to the fact it was a return on Amazon. It's not a bad bike for a park bike that has a gyro on it. Good tires. The wheels are actually heavier than the rims themselves are heavier. I don't buy that they're a double walled. Maybe in some areas, like the outer rim is doubled, but not the interior. I don't know if that means, other than it's not like the standard double wall I've seen. I didn't see a liner. We pulled the tire off, and they claim there's a liner. But it could mean there's something puncture resistant about the inner or the tire itself, some technology. The bottom bracket was a little bit cheesy, but those are things that can be replaced over time. But for a lighter rider and somebody maybe not abusing it, at the parks, it'll probably hold up fine. It does have an internal free wheel back here. These can be spendy, or you just buy a new wheel if they fail. It does have U-brakes on them, but they do have the plastic adjusters, which over time they could fail on you, and they're not that high a quality. But it could be something that could be repaired with just a new U-brake on it. Everything else is pretty standard. The levers are, I think, a plastic, but metal on the ends, which will probably hold up. Everything else is pretty standard on as far as bike goes. There was bearings inside the pedals, or there is bearings in the pedals, which give a little bit more life. I don't think I'd buy it for $200 full price, and as far as having it shipped to me. I think Walmart has this for $160 for a green or a white one. The red one's more money. Amazon has them all priced at $199. Again, I got this shipped to me used, and that's how I'd look for it if I was going to buy something like this. It's small. I think I said the top tube is 19.5, which is pretty good size for a small rider. An entry level, probably 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Probably somebody heavier kid, maybe not so much. But for $130, it'll probably get you through a season. If you do the things I said by, adjusting the bottom bracket and greasing the lubing, or grease in the bearings. The rear, not so much because of the integrated hub here. I just didn't want to get into that. I didn't feel like pulling that stuff apart and have it fall apart on me. Then I got a useless wheel. You can get away with not doing these things and just adjusting the bearings or the preload on them, and that'll probably make it last. Put some grease in them will definitely make it last. And then adjusting the brakes, something you're going to have to do anyway once they ride it and the cables start stretching. You could just take this to a bike shop and have them put it together professionally. I don't know what they're doing it for now, probably $60 to $100. But this would be the time to do it because the season hasn't started. You know, the bicycling season, they're probably pretty slow. Other than that, you know, not a bad bike. There's others out there that are similar to it. I just thought it'd be nice just to do a quick review on one of these Hilands that are pretty dirt cheap. You know, the ones you buy in Walmart that are assembled by the department stores, they don't do anything to adjust or lube anything, so don't expect those to be built any better than, well, they're not built well at all either. They're just, they get paid to just turn bikes out quick, so they're not going to put any effort into adjusting anything up. Okay, well, thanks for watching Hoosier Cycle, and we'll see you guys in the future.